Hello everyone, my name is Raymond, and welcome back to the next installment of the Project Feline Devlog series, a series about developing my dream game from beginning to end. And this month there hasn't really been much going on publicly. I haven't really shared too many updates, but I have been working on things intensely behind the scenes, and I want to just share with you a few of those things today. I do have a new version out with some of these changes implemented, but this new feature I'm putting in has been quite a headache for me, so I'll just be showing you what's been happening. And we also have a few question and answers to go through as well. In my last update video, I asked for you guys to send me some questions so that I could answer them in sort of a Q&A style, so I'll be getting around to those today as well. So without further ado, let's take a look at what's been happening in Project Feline. Alright, so welcome back to the Project Feline game, and as you can see, well yeah, the gameplay-wise doesn't look too different. Not much has changed in this aspect. However, I have been working intensely on a whole new feature, and that is that of the pause menu and user interface, finally. So the reason I bring this up is because a lot of you guys, after I released the previous version, went on to create a speedrunning forum or a leaderboard, and that was really cool. I did not expect that to happen at all. So to see people competing for the best time was just something incredible, and I wanted to implement some features that would make the facilitating of that a bit easier. And one commonly requested feature was the ability to restart the level without having to open the debug console and all those things. So that's a feature I've been really enthusiastic to put in, and as you can see on the pause menu we have a few options like continue, restart, settings, and exit. And you might think, well, this seems pretty straightforward, right? But there's a few little things I've been doing with this user interface to make it it's made it a little more complex, but it's hopefully will make it much easier later in development. So as you can see, these buttons, firstly, they are fully functional. They also make little noises too, and they change color when you put your mouse over it. So I can select the restart the level. It'll give me this prompt asking if I'm sure I want to do that, because I don't want people hitting it by accident, you know? So that'll all work fine, but the thing that's really the interesting part about it is mostly how I've built that user interface, and that's what I want to show you guys today. So one of the reasons it's taken so long is because this is all very new to me. I haven't used the UMG editor in Unreal too much, so I kind of just went and started learning it completely from scratch from the documentation at the start of this month. So it's been a great learning experience for me. But I'll show you what I've been making. Let's start off with that button. So as you can see, I have the button sprite, which I just made up in Photoshop. But if we go over to the widget itself, you can see that, well, usually this is what I'll show you what people normally do, right, when they make a user interface. So you go into a user interface, create a widget, and then open it up, and you have your canvas widget, and then maybe we'll chuck in a few buttons, right, for your menus. All right, so this, I hate when people do this. This is just completely messy. Firstly, there's a few problems with this, because let's say, well, for me at least, one thing I really focus on is consistency, especially with design. And the problem with doing UI this way is that, yeah, the buttons work, and they're actually pretty nice stock buttons, to be honest. Like, they do what they need to do. And, you know, if you wanted to, you could add some text, I think, in them as well. And that's all nice and fine, but they don't look great, really. I mean, let's be honest. They don't look like the bestly designed buttons in the world. And if you want to develop a polished experience, especially for the UI, because that's something because I'm a graphic designer as well, so I really love well-designed buttons. So if you did want to change this, you'd have to go into each button, change its style, change its padding and its color and its opacity and all that stuff. And that could be a little bit of a pain, especially when there's 50 buttons on the screen. So if I try and change the color of this one, yeah, so there's purple button now, great. But now I have to change it for the rest of them. And that's kind of a pain because, you know, I would kind of hope that the buttons in my game are all consistently styled. So I figured out a way to do that, and that was through making my own widget for the button. And it doesn't seem as much work as you might think. I didn't code a button from scratch at all. That's not what happened at all. Instead, what I did is I used that same button widget, except I've set up a few variables like the style and the button that are all controlled by this. So I've kind of embedded the button in another widget which I have control over, and this is the button I use everywhere. So if I open up the event graph, you see it just has a few pre-construct things that occur. So I've got a variable for its what the text of it will say, what the style of it's going to be, what the font's going to be, and it basically applies them all to the button when it constructs. And that's it. It's pretty simple. Not much fancy stuff going on, but what it essentially means is that all the buttons get styled the same way. And I can change them on a per instance basis if I wish to. So for example, let's say I make another one of these, right? And if I scroll down to user created, you can see in here somewhere we've got a button widget, which is the one I've made. And you can see it puts it in a bit of a weird spot, but if we move it around, we have a button, and that's great. And we can add multiple buttons if we want as well, and they'll all look the same. And I've got a few variables as well that control its text value and all that. So here's a few buttons. And now watch this. So let's say I can give these names. So if I go over to the variables, we can call this the big button. And then maybe this one is the wide button. And, you know, that's great and all. But, you know, let's say I want to change what color it is. And yes, I can do that individually, which is great. So I can make one of these slightly blue, which is cool. However, let's say if I wanted, let's say it's 3 months from now, and I've sort of decided more on what the visual style of the UI is going to be. Now, let's say I've built all these UI menus, and now I have to go through each one of them and restyle them to something else. Now that's going to be really hard to do, but if I've got it set up like this, I can simply pop open my blueprint for the button and change the properties there, and it should apply them to everything. So if I go ahead and change maybe the font of the button, so the text, let's say if I change that to the I've got it set to this font here, but I'll clear it so that it just goes back to the default font. And well, that's good enough. So if we apply it, you can see now it changes it to all these other buttons, and you can already see the benefit of that. So if I wanted to change that button sprite as well to be maybe a glossy button or anything else, I just change it in that button blueprint, and it changes it for all the buttons in the game. And to me, that seems like something worth investing in, because I don't want to have to go in later when I finally pick an art style and change every single button. And at the same time, I don't want to just chuck in the default buttons because they just look horrid. So that's sort of what I've been up to a lot lately. And not only that, so there's developing this whole framework of reusable widgets, but there's also another element too. I've been working on a settings menu too. And this has been the bulk of the work here, and this will not be coming in the current version, but I will have the other features in the current build that I'll link in the description. So everything will be there, the restart button, the pause menu, and all that, but the settings menu may take a while. And the reason for that is, well, it's something new to learn, and it's also quite complex. And as you can see, if I have it open here, it's basically got all the features you would want a PC game to have, and they're not all there yet, of course, but one of my big priorities is I want the prototype to be as easily accessible as possible, meaning that if you're running it on a potato computer, it can still perform to some degree. Now, previously that wasn't possible unless you opened up the .ini files and changed a few things around. So I wanted to make that a bit easier, and you might ask, like, you know, why are you doing this now? And the reason for that is because, well, I'm going to have to do it eventually at some point, and I might as well get it right and just develop the framework for it and then make it look pretty later on. So this menu has a few features. Most of them are in working order, but I still have to add a few more. And so I'd like to be able to do custom keybinds, because that's a feature people have been asking for a while, except I'm not sure if blueprints can do it. So I'll get back on that issue a bit later on, but for the moment I've been working primarily on graphical and video settings. So as you can see, I can change the full screen mode if I wish. I can change the resolution. I can change the vertical sync mode, which, well, yeah, previously VSync wasn't enabled, but there was still something weird happening with the frame rate, and that was this next setting, which is the frame rate limit. Now, by default, Unreal will smooth it to somewhere between 50 and 60. And I understand for speedrunners in particular, that might be a problem, especially if you want higher frame rates and more precise input and reduced input lag. So I've made a new option in here for a custom frame rate limit, and that ranges from 30 frames per second to 300 frames per second. If you think I should add more for the limit, please let me know. But I thought 300 was pretty, that was a pretty generous number, I'd say, because I can run things at 120 frames max. So that's what I put in. So what this should do is remove that smooth frame rate option. So if you want to have really precise input, you can do that now with an unlimited frame rate. And I thought, that would be a good feature for it to have. There's also a few other settings. I think someone had asked me a while back about motion blur, and I now have a setting for that too. So depending on your preference, you can disable or enable motion blur. Whatever preference you may have, you can set it. There's also the field of view, which is something I really want to put in, but I haven't quite figured out this option yet, so it's just this empty slider. And then there's the graphical quality and all that, so I can go ahead and change these, and it'll sort of change the quality of the graphics. And yeah, and you can see actually with all of these, all of the drop downs and sliders are all with widgets I had made as well. And I know that the drop down just looks like the default drop down, but I actually have a widget for that as well. So if I wanted to change the sprite around it, I can. Or if I wanted to change the font, I can do that as well, and it'll update it for all of the settings. And to me, that's a huge plus. Because like I said, I don't want to have to go through and redo everything. I'd rather just build a framework for it, make the menu, and then later make it all nice and pretty. And it's just so it gets it in working order first. That's the main priority. And the good thing about this too, one of the reasons I also decided to do this now is because I'd like to be able to use this system. So I'm kind of making it for myself as well, not just for the game. I want to be able to use this thing in any game I end up doing, so I can just drag these blueprints in, and then I've got a settings menu in any prototype I decide to make. And who knows, maybe I might show you guys how to do that, or maybe make a marketplace asset for it, just to make things easier for people. Because I think, having a robust set of settings is really important, especially for the PC platform, because a lot of people have all crazy different types of setups, and I want to be able to accommodate for that. So yeah, that's been the majority of the workload, and I've also added another little thing. I have of course, a start menu now, and I have a level select too. So if you press play, you can actually select a level, and just ignore the white boxes and the buttons. I'm supposed to be putting images there later. But you can select between the first level and the second level. So that's the second level for the people that played the previous version. And yeah, so that's been the majority of the workload there. So in this next version, I won't have the settings menu here yet, but you'll be able to have the option for the restart and the exit, and you'll also get this main menu minus the settings. So yeah, I know it's been quite a while since the last video. I know it's not being as developed as fast as I would like to, but I'm working my best here to get these features out. And then after I do these settings, it's given me a lot of time over the past month to think about the gameplay too. And there's a few ideas I have that I'd like to put in as well. So as I said, a few of these features will be available in the new version, which I've linked in the description. Please give it a play, let me know your thoughts on it. If you have any feedback about the current state of the settings menu, and if there's anything you'd like to see in it, be sure to leave a comment or shoot me a message in Discord and let me know. I'd really appreciate that. Alright, and now it's time for the question and answer segment. So I was really excited to see some of the questions you guys had, so let's go through and answer them. The first question we have is from Addy, or ADI. Will you ever do sculpting for character designing? I'd really love to. I have a little bit of experience with sculpting. I once had used ZBrush while I was a student, except, God, that program's confusing. But yeah, I'm looking forward to be able to relearn sculpting and attempt that, especially for the Gabriella character, because I would like it to look really polished and kind of sort of Pixar movie-esque. That'd be really cool. So yeah, I'm going to try doing some sculpting. We'll see how it goes. If the licensing for it proves to be complicated, or let's say, I don't know, for some weird reason, then if I decide not to do it, it'll be for a good reason, let's just say that, but I'll give it a shot. The next question is from Zalonc. Have you thought about a GoFundMe for the project? I have thought about crowdfunding for the project. I've looked into, I've yet to look into a few of the options still. I know that there's Kickstarter, I know there's GoFundMe. I'm not sure about what the other services are, but at the moment I've been using Patreon for the Devlog series. But as for the game itself, I'm not sure if that's a smart thing to put on Patreon, so I've been looking into some options about funding that through a more traditional crowdfunding thing. So Yeah, I have thought about it. I still have some decisions to make, of course, because I'm very new to crowdfunding. So if you guys have any advice about it, of course, or have any services you'd recommend, I'd be delighted to know what those thoughts are. And you can go ahead and leave those in the comments if you wish, or shoot me a message on Discord if you have any ideas. Next question is from Marcel Davis. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I really like the concept art you showed us. Could you show us more of it? And maybe it as something to unlock in the game. That'd be a great idea, actually. As for the concept art for the game specifically, I think the only pieces I've drawn are the base character concept I did in the first episode and the storyboard I did in the second episode. And I do have a third one. I think I'll put them up on screen for the ones that I might not have shown yet. But the majority of the concept art, well, it's interesting because the majority of the art that inspired the project were drawings I did when I was a kid. And if you had watched my update video, I went into a bit about the story behind how I came up with all this stuff. And it was mostly just ideas I had when I was like from 10 years old to now. So a lot of the ideas are still on like physical paper, like in my closet somewhere. So I'll try and get some of those out over time, and I'll show you a bit of sketches I used to do. But yeah, I'll be looking forward to developing some more concrete concepts in the future, and that'll probably take place in the production phase. The next question is from Dan C. Are you moving the character via in-engine physics/forces, or are you just moving the position manually as she walks along walls? Good question. For the regular movement that she does around on the ground, I'm just using the default character blueprint that comes with Unreal, so it's the default character logic. As for the wall running, I believe I'm using probably, I'd say the launch character node to launch the character along the walls, using mathematics from the wall and all that stuff. So it's a little complicated, and it may take a while to explain, but I'm using, I don't know if the launch character node suffices as physics/forces, but if it does, then I suppose therein lies the answer to your question. Next question is from Philip Street. Or Phillips ST, I don't know. I'm a 3D artist, primarily for about 6 years, but I've learned basic C# and the ins and outs of Unity over the past about 3 years. I feel like I could more easily achieve amazing graphics in UE4, and the blueprint system is appealing. But should I invest more time into UE4, even though I already know how to work with Unity, which already has good graphical capabilities? Well, as someone, I've used Unity as well. In fact, I started using it when I was about 12. So in the past about 8 or so years I've had using Unity, and the past year I've had using Unreal. I can say that the best option is really what you're more efficient with, or at least that's tends to be what works most of the time. However, I will say that after using Unreal, I could definitely see why that is appealing, and I would probably, from my own experience, recommend it, especially if you're more oriented in design and visual ways of thinking. For me, Unity was a great engine, no doubt, and it was a great thing to start off with. However, the workflow of it was just, when you compare it to Unreal's workflow, it just seems a little bit undercooked. And the most interesting fact I know about Unreal, if you want to make a choice about which engine you should use, I guess the thing to consider is who made either of those engines. And well, the answer for Unreal is that it was developed 20 years ago. It started being developed 20 years ago by Epic Games. Now, I think we all know who Epic Games are. They're a very credible game studio, and they built that engine for them. So I would trust that engine a lot more over Unity, which was developed by software engineers, not for any specific game in mind. So at least from my experience using Unreal, that passion and knowing that the engine was built for them kind of shows in the quality that you get. But again, it's really up to what works best. Like if you're really efficient with C#, then I would probably stick with engines that support C#. But if you're interested to learn something new, I would go for it. Like try learning it and see how you go. And if it doesn't work after a few months, then you can always switch back, and no dramas really. Next question is from Logith. I don't know. Have you decided on what art style you want to take for this game? I've put a bit of thought into it, but I think I still need to do a bit of figuring out for the final choice. I will say I'm heavily inspired by the styles of the Sonic games and Mirror's Edge and Halo, because those games to me look, especially the latter two, look amazing in my opinion. Yeah, that's sort of the direction I'd like to go in, but I still have a lot of choices to make about what would be the best choice to do, especially given my skill set. All right, and the next question from Silver Rexy. I just realized, how many ears does she have? Does she have one human ear, one cat, or like just 1 or 3 ears? This is important, please help. Great question, Silver. She does have at least 1 cat ear. That's all you'll get for now. All right, it looks like that's the last question we have for this episode. So for those that left those questions, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to answer them. If you have a question you'd like to see me answer, feel free to leave it in the comments of this video. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the community support I've been receiving lately. Most notably with things like my Patreon, thank you so much to my top supporters, and to the artists drawing the fan art pieces. And those are just an absolute pleasure to look through. And you know, I'd love to see more of this in the future. So if you guys have any fan art you'd like to see in these videos, or if you'd like to see your name in the video, be sure to either support the devlogs on Patreon or, you know, draw up a fan art piece and leave it in the fan art section of the community Discord, and which if you haven't joined yet, definitely should. You know, I'm there, a bunch of other people are there, it's all fun and cool, we're all having a good time. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that there isn't too many major game updates this month, and I know it's been a little slow, but I'm trying my best to pump out the features as fast and efficiently as I can. I'm looking forward to share more about those settings in a future episode. So if there's something you'd like to see before that time, then I would recommend that you leave a comment or message me on Discord about some ideas you have about the settings. For the meantime, I hope you have fun with what I've developed so far, and I'm always open to suggestions. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.